In the context of current discussions on AI, one of the most debated issues is explainability. The concept of explainability refers to whether a process can be explained. For instance, whether we can detail the individual steps that starts with the input and ultimately lead to the outcome of the process. The reason why explainability is such a central topic in the AI context is that several AI systems are black boxes. We give them inputs and get outputs, but the connection between input and output is extremely complex and tends to suffer from significant opacity, to the point that it is not explainable even for experts in the field. But why is explainability important from the point of view of AI ethics? Because according to some, without explainability, AI systems can have a negative impact on central moral aspects of AI use. Unexplainable AI systems may create legal and ethical risks, erode trustworthiness in the use of AI, and undermine autonomy of decision-making. Let's look at each of these concerns in turn. A first reason to worry about the lack of explainability of AI is connected to legal and ethical risks. When we make decisions, especially in high-risk scenarios, it is expected that we justify our decisions and be accountable and responsible for them. For example, we expect policymakers to be able to justify and explain their choices. Accordingly, these activities are regulated by legal and moral standards of responsibility and accountability. However, if the connection between input and output is opaque, it can be very difficult to understand the causal contribution that led to the ultimate decision. As a result, opaque AI systems can challenge the morality of decision-making and complicate processes of responsibility attribution in moral terms. Moreover, a lack of explainability can also make it difficult to identify errors and thus pose risks to autonomy and safety. As we have seen before, AI systems can be biased and unfair, and the fact that they are also black boxes can make it difficult to spot those biases and address their implications. For instance, in medicine, AI models can be used to aid diagnosis. However, we know that AI models that are trained on historical data can produce predictions that do not work for underrepresented populations, such as specific socioeconomic and ethnic groups. The presence of bias, combined with opacity, can make it more difficult to spot errors and create additional risks to the safety of underrepresented individuals whose diagnosis might be inaccurate and dangerous as a result. Opacity is also considered an issue for the trustworthiness of systems and processes that involve the use of AI. As we have seen before, trust and trustworthiness are central aspects of AI ethics, and explainability can be connected to them. The worry here is that decision-making processes that are not explainable cannot be trustworthy and can lead to concerns, suspicion, and a general lack of trust in the process, since we might consider trustworthy only the systems and processes where we can explain how and why decisions and outputs are reached. Therefore, the lack of explainability of AI is a central concern in the ethics of AI, in connection to several other considerations. In ethical terms, we can consider explainability a value and define it more specifically as an instrumental value. We call instrumental values those values that we consider important as a means to something else, for instance, other values. Instrumental values can be distinguished from intrinsic values, which are instead valuable in and of themselves. A possible example of instrumental value is individual privacy, that might be considered a crucial means to respect an intrinsic value such as safety. Similarly, explainability is something we seem to value mostly as a means rather than an end, for instance, as a means to respect intrinsic values such as autonomy and safety. The instrumental nature of explainability has important implications. Considerations and decisions about explainability will always be contextual. They will always depend on contextual considerations about which other values we can and should promote. This points to the complexity of explainability, which as a consequence of its instrumentality has to be balanced with other values. Moreover, it shows that achieving more explainable systems doesn't necessarily fix all the issues that can arise with AI systems and doesn't remove the need for moral and political considerations. For example, consider the use of AI in autonomous driving cars. Let's say that we want to develop more explainable AI in this case. That decision could push design towards presenting as many details as possible about the ways in which the system classifies the environment surrounding the car, so that the user could, in principle, intervene to correct possible mistakes. In this case, increasing explainability might be beneficial because it could empower the individual user and promote their autonomy. Thus, we could make the case for explainability as something instrumental to promote an intrinsic value such as autonomy. At the same time, however, providing too many details to the driver may also create confusion and lead them to act when not necessary or dangerous, with risks to their safety. In this case, we could say that opacity is acceptable because of moral considerations on its instrumental support for the intrinsic value of safety. Therefore, implementing explainability as an instrumental value requires complex decisions on how to mediate between the intrinsic values that explainability is supposed to benefit. These decisions have both technical and moral components. Namely, deciding which level of explainability is necessary involves taking technical steps and assessing the feasibility of developing explainable AI approaches. But these decisions have to balance moral considerations too, grounding the reason to try and achieve more explainability or accept opacity. Another striking example in this direction concerns the use of AI in the context of triage in a hospital, where the fast and data-intensive capabilities of AI systems, like neural networks, can be leveraged to quickly assign patients to intensive care or other units. The use of this AI-based approach has been recognized as more accurate than traditional methods. According to some, we should trump concerns on explainability as long as this leads to more accuracy, because this move benefits a central intrinsic value like beneficence. Yet, according to others, the lack of explainability of the approach can be problematic when it comes to checking the quality of these models, and thus from point of view of other intrinsic values, such as non-maleficence. So, in conclusion, we have seen that explainability is at the center of various discussions on the ethics of AI, as an instrumental value that is connected to crucial intrinsic values, including trustworthiness, autonomy, and safety. As such, choices about explainability will be contextual to these other values and trade-offs between them. We can conclude that, much like other issues we have seen in this course, explainability shows that the choices about the design and deployment of AI systems have both technical as well as moral, political, and social components.